Good morning, everybody, and welcome to your lunch break. Today is Wednesday. We've made it to the middle of another week. And before we get started today, I need to address the elephant in the room, or the change in the room. If you are one of my regular viewers, then you might notice I'm not at home today. We had a gas problem, and so my sidewalk was getting torn up. And I said, I don't think that's going to be the best background noise. So relocated back to the office. If you are new here, then nothing has changed for you. Welcome. My name is Ivana. I am your host. And today we've got a really fun conversation to talk about, something a little bit more lighthearted than what we have been used to in the last few days. And that is about eating, playing, and enjoying your time during COVID in a socially distanced way and in the streets. So today I am joined by Birmingham City Councilor Hunter Williams. Hunter Williams is the chair of the Public Safety Committee. He is here to talk about the Eat in the Streets. He's here to talk about the Shared Spaces program that allows some of these things to happen and allows some businesses to expand onto sidewalk, streets, and places like that. So if you have questions for Hunter, please let us know in the comments. I will be monitoring them and ask him as we go. And otherwise, Councilor, let's just get started. I know that the Eat in the Streets program was there was a trial run of Eat in the Streets in Avondale, which was in mid-August. I'm looking at my notes here, the 14th and the 15th.
Yep.
And tell us about that event and what the purpose of this trial run was.
Yeah. So as you know, Avondale is one of the city's entertainment districts. What that means is that alcohol regulations are laxed in there, where you can actually have an open container and go from business to business, or restaurant or bar to restaurant and bar. As long as you abide by what those entertainment district regulations and rules are. So one thing, and I have to give this credit to Mayor Woodfin and his team. During this pandemic, we have seen a huge decline in really all of our businesses in the city of Birmingham, from a revenue perspective to those businesses, but also with a huge emphasis on restaurants and bars. For the first several weeks during the pandemic, restaurants and bars were completely shut down. If you'll remember, then a lot of them were doing some curbside takeout, but they still weren't allowing patrons to come in. Eventually, the governor let some guidelines forth and some restrictions loosened a little bit that allowed restaurants to have a 50% capacity within the physical restaurant itself. So you could do more than just curbside pickup if you wanted to go to a restaurant. From a revenue perspective, we still saw a huge delta, a huge gap between what our restaurants were producing in terms of sales, with what they were not producing, basically, even with the 50% capacity and the curbside pickup. So this was an effort to try to open up the public spaces, open up the physical street that belongs to the taxpayer, belongs to the city of Birmingham, and let those restaurants utilize those large outdoor spaces to recover what they were not recovering from that 50% occupancy. Like you said, it was first started in Avondale, I believe the weekend of the 14th, and just about every single restaurant in Avondale saw a huge increase in their sales, because now they had not just their dining room at 50% capacity, but they had the entire 41st Street corridor with tables set up where they could serve both food and alcohol in the streets.
So businesses were allowed to serve alcohol into the streets, and I guess outside of their four walls and their maybe their small patio areas.
Yeah. So, one big push that we've had, or has been a push of mine, is to make sure that we get rid of some of these archaic alcohol rules and regulations that we've had in Alabama since, I guess, the beginning of time. I'm not really sure why we have them, but the first thing that I caught a lot of flack for when I won my city council seat is what we call the brunch bill, which allows people to drink alcohol on Sundays, even while church service is going on. And then the entertainment districts is another part of that that has happened over the past few years, where we have allowed certain areas in the city to loosen up the alcohol regulations set forth by the state and allow people to actually consume alcohol in public, which is against state law. But these districts allow that. So that is the reason that this first occurred in Avondale. However, now that the pandemic is going on, the ABC board, which is the state regulatory agency that regulates alcohol, has kind of come off a lot of their regulations in order to promote business and promote commerce. A lot of people have noticed that they've been able to get actually to-go beverages from restaurants when they do curbside pickup. A lot of people don't remember, but that actually was illegal before the pandemic and before the ABC board kind of loosened up those regulations. But so the ABC board now has worked with the city of Birmingham to loosen up those regulations outside of our entertainment districts. So you can't, to answer your question, it's been a little bit of a moving target, but absolutely in both Eat in the Streets and our shared space permit process, the restaurants and bars can serve alcohol in those designated public spaces where they were not able to before.
Now, if you are familiar with the Avondale neighborhood, you know that 41st Street corridor, as you put it, is a very wide street. There is plenty of room there. So these Eat in the Street event, number one, are these going to continue? And number two, are you targeting them, and is the council targeting them towards places like Avondale, where there's a lot of businesses in one area with a large outdoor space?
Sure. So I think that, I think it makes sense to target it more where there is a group of businesses that are willing to participate, right? Not all businesses are willing to participate, and not all streets can be shut down. For example, some of the streets that run through the city of Birmingham are actually don't belong or are not under the purview of the city of Birmingham. An example of that would be Highway 78 that runs through the city of Birmingham. Shutting that down would require approval from AL.com, not just the city engineer. So, it makes sense to both, kind of stay in your lane, so to say, and say these are streets where there's enough restaurants or bars that would like to participate. And these are streets that actually belong to the city of Birmingham, and we have the authority to shut down. Avondale, you make a great point. Avondale has a ton of space out in front of those restaurants on 41st Street. It's 4 lanes with also a turn lane in the middle. So you have a pretty large sidewalk on both sides and 5 lanes worth of shared space that can be utilized for the Eat in the Streets. Most recently, this past weekend, right off Second and Richard Arrington was the second phase of the Eat in the Streets. Very successful. I actually attended the first night like I did in Avondale, and it was put together in a way where it was crowded, but a good crowded. What I mean by good crowded is people were actually socially distancing. People were sitting with their respective families or groups that they were with, and there wasn't you didn't feel like that you were doing anything that could potentially cause you harm from the pandemic. It was really well spaced out. Everyone was really respectful of everyone's personal space. No one's standing over tables with other people and that kind of thing. And so it was a success both in Avondale and also along Richard Arrington.
Is there a third Eat in the Streets planned yet?
I think that there will be. Stay tuned. I don't know if we have released any details about that yet, but I think it's something that needs to be ongoing, because we have a situation right now where we have a bunch of restaurants and bars that you could say are not only in the city center of Birmingham, but really all over the city that define the city. We're known as a foodie city. We have people that come in from all over the Southeast, especially all over central Alabama, to come eat and drink in our restaurants and bars. A lot of the revitalization in the city of Birmingham can be attributed to our culinary scene. And so we owe it to our culinary scene, to our restaurants and bars, and to our businesses that have helped revitalize our city to make sure that they have whatever they need to stay afloat during this pandemic. We've already seen several shut down within not only the city of Birmingham, but the Birmingham metro area. Everybody has a favorite restaurant or knows of a restaurant they probably frequented that either has shut down or has talked about shutting down. And we want to make sure that we do whatever possible as a city, as a municipality, to make sure that doesn't happen. And so my hope is that this will continue as long as it needs to in terms of shutting down the streets. Now, we get a lot of criticism about this because we have, first of all, everybody wants it, and every bar, or if there's a restaurant by itself or a bar by itself, they might say, why didn't you shut down my street, and that. And it really is, we have to find groups together where it makes sense instead of shutting down a 4-lane road in front of one restaurant. But on the other side of that, we get a lot of complaints from drivers, right? We have, my email box is flooded. That was my way to work, or that was my way to whatever, my favorite gas station, whatever it was. Lots of people unhappy that the streets were shut down, but just remember that, it's shut down for the course of a weekend. It is an inconvenience, but in the scheme of things, it's a minor inconvenience. You go a block around, and then you get to the same destination. Maybe it takes 5 extra minutes, but I think for the greater good, for keeping these restaurants afloat, keeping all these employees that work in these respective places employed, and making sure that our economy continues in the pandemic, probably is the greater good than the minor inconvenience of having to drive around the block or wherever the eat in the streets is.
I was watching our comments, and we've got Jolene, we've got Melanie, we've got several people that say, this is such a great thing, and don't share that same criticism and say, look, this is great that we are having businesses stay open. This is great that we can sit outside. But let's shift from eating in the streets to shared spaces. Now, shared spaces let some of these businesses expand a little bit outside of their doors and outside of their 4 walls to be able to operate in a sidewalk capacity and not shutting it down the street. I know one of my favorite establishments over on, I think, 24th North had been able to add tables outside on the sidewalks, which was very cool. And I think a lot of people appreciated, because some of, especially these kind of new and popular north side of Birmingham facilities are a lot smaller inside, and they don't have really a whole lot of room to socially distance. Even if they want to, they only end up with 3 or 4 tables in their restaurant. So let's talk about shared spaces. Who can have them, and what exactly does the restaurant or business have to do and able to receive that permit from the council?
Yeah, so the shared spaces permit is something that is kind of born from the eat in the streets, right? I talked about what about the one restaurant and the one bar that wasn't grouped together with other restaurants and bars. And so, the city's probably not going to shut down a 4-lane street in front of one restaurant, right? Well, so now every single restaurant, and this doesn't even apply just to the city center. A lot of people think about this is what's going on downtown, but this is any restaurant or any bar in the city limits of Birmingham can apply for a shared space permit. Now, a shared space permit means that the restaurant can actually take over both the sidewalk area and the adjacent parking spaces, depending on how the parking spaces are configured and some other logistical things. It's not the same for every single restaurant or bar, but they can actually share that space with the city of Birmingham. It's a city right away, and they will be allowed to set up tables and serve both food and alcohol in that space. Now they have to, there's a lot of requirements that come with it. Obviously for ADA reasons, we have to allow the sidewalk to still be passable for those that might need ADA compliance. If they have some sort of disability where they actually need to have the sidewalk open, we do require that they comply with our ADA laws and regulations. But other than that, anybody that's traveled to another country, especially in Europe and South America, know that the idea of having a shared space is not new. It's not something that's absolutely a crazy idea. It's actually done in a lot of countries, and it's done very well. The main problem we have in this state and in this country is our very stringent alcohol laws and not being able to serve alcohol on public property. So the ABC has agreed with us with these shared spaces, as long as they're properly marked and cordoned off, and the city has gone out to it and made sure that it's properly marked and cordoned off, that alcohol actually can be served through the term of this ordinance. Now, this ordinance expires on September the 30th. But my hope is that we can extend this into something that is a permanent operation for the city of Birmingham. I personally have gone to, I'm trying to think how many. I know I can count 3 shared space venues, and it's all worked perfectly. It's all worked very well. It's allowed to make up for that capacity that I was talking about, and it makes people feel safe. I don't want to be inside a crowded bar or restaurant right now because of the pandemic, and a lot of people share that same concern that I have. But I don't mind being outside if in a situation where, if that type of crowd was inside, I might feel uncomfortable, but that type of crowd outside, I really don't feel that uncomfortable with it. So it's aimed at helping our restaurants and bars, our culinary scene, stay afloat. And I do hope that it can be something of permanent operation, because I've noticed that even if there is room inside, people just enjoy being outside, especially this time of year at nighttime. It's nice out. Birmingham has a beautiful fall, beautiful spring. Summertime, obviously during the day might be a little bit steamy, but at nighttime, it's really nice out. And I would actually prefer to have that space, and would prefer personally to sit outside. And that's just me. But another thing about it is we talk about it being shared space, and we talk about these restaurants that are struggling right now to make ends meet, to stay afloat. And really, the restaurants are taxpayers. The restaurants are paying, not only are they paying sales tax into the coffers of the city of Birmingham, but their employees are paying occupational tax, and it's a huge revenue stream to the city of Birmingham. So it's really, we're really giving the taxpayer their own space back. So we're not doing anything that's really that out of this world. We're really, it's their space to begin with. It's the taxpayer's space. And so it makes sense that we're sharing it. Now, we've gotten a little bit of criticism about it. And people, obviously there's groups of people that don't want to see alcohol served in public. There's groups of people that don't want their sidewalk interrupted. And there's groups of people that don't want a parking space taken up, or usually it's 3 or 4 parking spaces is about what's in front of a restaurant. They definitely don't want that taken up. But I just going back to that greater good and what we need to do to support our businesses and make sure that those businesses keep people employed. This is definitely one of those things. It is something that is for the greater good of the city of Birmingham, for our culinary scene and our tourism, that really, like I said, these restaurants and bars draw a lot of people from Central Alabama and really all over the Southeast. But right now in this pandemic, really from Central Alabama coming in to eat and drink in our establishments.
Where in our office where I am now is on the north side of Birmingham, close to the districts of 2nd Avenue North, where there are so many bars and restaurants that are very popular that are utilizing the shared space program and or permit, I should say. I know one establishment I went to over the past weekend, they had a shared space outside on the sidewalk. And it seemed like people really enjoyed that. And like you said, would love to do that even outside of pandemic and just outside of a health crisis. They would much rather sit outside and enjoy the weather. We know that the weather is about to, fingers crossed, turn beautiful here, and we're going to get rid of some of this humidity. You can tell I've been in it today. But I know you said you had some pushback, and we should note that Councilor Williams is a reserve sheriff's deputy. So I know that you have thought about some of these safety concerns or any other concerns you've gotten. So aside from people who just don't want to see alcohol served, what are some of the concerns you've gotten maybe about traffic barriers, or maybe unfortunately accidents or other things that could happen because of shared spaces or eating the streets? And do you think that the council has taken those into consideration?
Yeah, I think that the reason that we make the city engineer be in charge of shutting down that street is because that, when we're talking about eating the streets, safety is obviously our number one objective. But while we want to do whatever we can to help these restaurants and bars in our culinary scene, we have an obligation as a city of Birmingham to make sure it's done in a safe way to protect those that are both our citizens and our visitors in Birmingham. So we actually have the city engineer goes out and makes sure that everything is from an engineering perspective is as safe as it possibly can be. From the shared spaces perspective, that's another reason that the city of Birmingham actually has to go out, and a member of the Department of Transportation has to inspect it, because we don't want a table that's butting out into a lane of traffic, or some sort of setup where it's not clearly marked or defined, and we have someone trying to park into something that maybe they shouldn't park in, and obviously be a liability for whoever is attending the respective space. So it is something that has been thought out in great detail, and it's also something that the city of Birmingham goes out on each individual restaurant, and then obviously when we're doing the larger event for the whole street, it's engineered for the entire area and perimeter. But there's a reason that this is a permit process, and we didn't throw up our hands and say, all right, have at it, because we want to make sure that that this is being done in a safe way. And it also gives us that coverage with the ABC board, where that we have an agreement with the ABC board where alcohol can be served as long as everything is definitively marked, and there's some other things that restaurants have to do to make sure that they're in compliance. And we want to make sure that our restaurants are doing what we've agreed with the ABC board, so that this can continue. I hope that this is extremely successful, and that we show that a family at dinner having a glass of wine or a beer, or a group of friends having a cocktail after work, that the whole city is not going to explode. Everything is fine. Nothing, it's not the end of the world. And I think that we so far are demonstrating that this works very, very well. We have had no issues with any kind of public intoxication issues, with any kind of, fights breaking out, and all these other things that you actually might see on a Saturday night in a normal bar. We haven't had any of these issues. Everyone is being extremely respectful. And all these seem to be, especially the Eat in the Streets, seem to be very family oriented. When I went both in Avondale and in downtown this couple weekends ago, there's just as many families with kids as there are, younger people having a drink or dinner after work. So I think it works very well in terms of a safety perspective. And I think that there's a reason that it was set up like it was, to make sure that the city does have a grasp of what's going on, instead of just, opening the floodgates and saying, just set up wherever, take over wherever.
Mm-hmm. And two, we should note, I know you said we're helping businesses, and especially many of these bars that are having to stop serving alcohol by 11 o'clock. This, I know, helps them at least be able to have some business and have extra business that they can push out into those shared spaces before they have to stop serving at 11. Melanie, I think I said it best. She said we have to sacrifice so that these businesses survive. And if we are sacrificing a little bit of sidewalk space, it seems like most people can agree on that.
Yeah, and one thing that I ask about people that like not to email me, but that actually approach me in person about it, is I say, how many times have you actually walked on that sidewalk in front of that business? And they think about it and they're like, well, usually it's once or maybe none, maybe never. But it's, what if I wanted to kind of mentality. And it's, most people that are actually down in these areas where these restaurants are utilizing this shared space permit are actually there to be a patron of that restaurant or bar anyway. So they're enjoying it. And so the majority of people, I think, are very appreciative for it. And then, with a few parking spaces missing, we have a lot of street parking downtown. There is a little bit of confusion about private lots sometimes when you have mainly people coming in from outside of the metro area that just think you can park in a lot and then get upset when they get booted or towed. But the truth is that we're trying to promote more walkability, more using Uber anyway, ride sharing, things like that, as well as if you have to park a block away from where you're going to dinner, also might not be the end of the world. You just have to walk a block to wherever you're going, to your restaurant or bar.
Well, and look, if you can use your legs and if you can walk, then you should do it. So we will end with a good tip from Jeremiah here. He says, let's support our industry folks. And Jeremiah, I think you're right. I think that Councilor would agree with you. And so we'll take this as a moment to remind everybody, eat at a local restaurant, go to a local business, or do something of that nature this week. So Councilor, thank you so much for joining us, for explaining a little bit of this to our audience. And for everybody that has watched, thank you so much for tuning in. And we will see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Yvonne.